Guys, we've got a brand new two-wheel drive Arrma Vorteks here, but that's not what this video is about, because I want to try to make the world's first low center of gravity Arrma Gorgon. The Vorteks comes on a brand new LCG short wheelbase version of the chassis, and even though the Gorgon body doesn't currently fit, I think we might be able to make it fit. My main concern is that the Gorgon wheelbase and the Vorteks wheelbase are a little bit different, and I also don't know if the shock mounts or the bumper mounts are going to be the same between the two. So today we're going to find out if we can make the best handling Gorgon in the world, because this LCG chassis is going to be a lot more stable than the stock Gorgon chassis. I've got a brand new set of Gorgon body mounts here. As you can see, the body mount for the Gorgon is completely different in the front than it is on the Vorteks, and it's also completely different in the rear, though the mounts do look the same. Let's see if we can get these mounted up. Assuming this works, I've also got some pretty interesting upgrades we're going to be doing to this platform that should make it pretty much bulletproof. And of course, you know we're not going to be leaving this powertrain stock. This is going to get an upgrade as well. All right, first step. Is this thing going to be dead in the water right away? These two look pretty similar on the bottom. Let's see if this is going to fit. All right, looks like that drops right in there. Hopefully all these screws will line up. Next thing we need to do is see if these shocks are compatible. The stock Gorgon shocks are 116 millimeters in the rear. Okay, as you can see, these are a little bit shorter. They might work, but I've got another option we can try in just a minute, because I get the feeling these front shocks are going to be even more of a problem. Let's see if that front tower is going to fit first, though. Because if this front tower doesn't fit, then none of the rest of it's really necessary to figure out. All right, pulling this tower off, and comparing the two, we can see the Gorgon tower is quite a bit taller, and the mounting systems are completely different. The Vorteks as well as the Fury use a tab and slot mounting system, while the Gorgon uses a more traditional pin-style system. Let's see if it's going to fit. Okay guys, the answer on this is sort of. It fits in there, but these back screws don't line up. However, the front ones do, so hopefully that's all we need. Assuming everything else works, I'm sure we can figure out something for these rear screws. That being said, with just the two screws there, it does already feel pretty stout. Okay, shock towers are on. Does the Gorgon body fit? And look at that, it lines up perfectly. We've got the front mount in and the rear mount in, so I think this is gonna work. The next question though is, do the Gorgon bumpers fit? Let's try the front one first. This little cover right here is a great sign because it's covering the hole where this mount goes. All right, let's see if this bottom piece is compatible. Yep, slips right on there, which means I think this front bumper is gonna work. Now, if you're doing this starting with the Vorteks and a random kit of parts like I am, there are gonna be some screws missing, like these right here. That's why I always recommend you save all your screws. I've got this huge bag of screws here that I've been saving for years, and I know I'll have the screws I need. Let's see what we've got. Here we go, guys. These screws should work perfectly, and I've got this nice long screw for the front. At this point, you might be asking yourself why I went the route of getting the full Vorteks instead of just getting a Gorgon and a Vorteks chassis. And that's because right now, the Vorteks chassis is in pre-order, so I wouldn't be able to do this that way. I also don't currently have a full Gorgon, so I'm having to piecemeal this together from the Gorgon body kit and then a set of shock towers. There we go, front end's done and looking good. Now the last major hurdle, will this back bumper fit? Obviously, this rear is a little bit more complicated because we need to get these pins out. And these pins just push through the front once you get this bottom plate off. All right, but will it fit? It looks like it's going to, guys. I'm starting to get excited. I've been wanting to try a low center of gravity Gorgon ever since it came out, and it looks like today is going to be the day. Okay, but do the rest of the rear bumper pieces fit on? That one does. And this one does. I think we're going to be in business here. Just need to dig this screw out of the bag. Now, of course, if you had a full Gorgon, again, you wouldn't need to do that. Did you see what I did there? I forgot to transfer this D block. Let me get that switched over real quick. I bet you guys were yelling at me about that, weren't you? I actually don't have a ton of experience with this platform, so I didn't even realize that was in there. Interestingly, it looks like this is off of a different vehicle. You can see that these are countersunk when they don't actually need to be. All right, now let's see if everything lines up. Oh, it's a little tight. Maybe it doesn't. Oh no, we can make it work. And there she is, fits on there perfectly. Now, because we're using the Vorteks, we don't have the shocks off the Gorgon, so this thing's not gonna have a ton of down travel, but it should have a decent amount of up travel, so let's give these a try and see how they work. Okay guys, now we just need some tires. I've got these suitably low profile and sporty looking tires off of the Maverick Quantum Flux 2. Now obviously if this turns out to be any good and you decide you want to make one yourself, there's going to be different options for what you can do. If you have a Gorgon, you'll probably end up using most of your Gorgon parts. But if you're starting with a Vorteks and making an LCG Gorgon from there, you're going to have your choice of wheels and tires, as well as deciding whether or not you want to get the taller Gorgon shocks. We'll just have to see how these shorter shocks work out in just a minute. Now we just need to put the body on and check it out. Before we go out, let's see if we can do something about these missing front shock tower screws. As I'm sure you know, sometimes our bashing sessions get a little hectic and I don't want to break this prematurely. Now, before we take this off, I just want to take a quick measurement of this gap. That's about 5.5 millimeters right here at the edge. And the reason I wanted to take that measurement is because I think we can make a couple of spacers to go in here and then drill into the chassis right here and add those screws back in. First thing we need to do is take a couple more measurements. This hole is about 6 millimeters in diameter. The screw hole itself is 3, and then the depth of this is about 3 millimeters. Now I'm gonna go into Fusion 360 and create a spacer, which we are then gonna cut out of this 8 millimeter thick Delrin sheet. And we're gonna do that using this awesome Algo Laser Alpha Mark II. This thing's super convenient. It has a touch screen and it allows you to bring your drawing into the laser cutter itself and cut directly from the interface without having to have a computer connected, which makes this kind of prototyping a lot faster. Okay, so whereas this laser can definitely cut the spacer, it's a little bit thin-walled and I'm having some trouble getting it to not melt the edges. Let's go ahead and 3D print this instead. While we're waiting for that to print, let's go ahead and prep the chassis. I'll just put this temporarily back in here. And I've got a drill bit that's a little bit smaller than the screws that are going to be going in, and I'm just going to mark the spot on the chassis. Now that we can see where we need to drill, we'll just drill a hole in both sides. All right, it took a few tries with the 3D printer, but I was able to get these to print out. Sometimes these little parts can be pretty tricky. Let's see how they fit. And there we go, guys. That should be a lot more secure. Let's get a 2S battery in this thing and see what she can do. Okay, guys, let's do a quick speed test to make sure she's stable. Feels pretty good. Full throttle. One more pass. One more. All right, let's see what that is. 24 miles an hour. That's pretty good, and she feels really stable. Let's see how she bashes. Well, that actually works really, really well. These shorter shocks reduce body roll, though they do make it a little bit bouncy sometimes, so it's always going to be a trade-off when it comes to suspension tuning. One place that it is deficient is power. Let's fix that. 24 miles an hour definitely isn't bad, but I think we can do better. In the Fury video, we did a really mild brushless setup. Today, we're gonna go a little less mild. And to do that, we're gonna use this Spectrum 3150 kV motor, as well as this Spectrum 120 amp ESC. You probably would be best off going with the 10 BL120 G2 combo, but these are what I have on hand, and I think this is gonna mount right up. At around $80 on eBay, this SPM XSE1120 rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? ESC isn't the cheapest option, but it certainly makes for a nice clean install on here. Now, before we install the motor, I want to address what I think are two of the biggest weak points of this platform, and that's the spur gear and the drive shaft. I've got metal replacements for both. Whereas I haven't killed a spur gear yet, I've definitely come pretty close, and the teeth on the Fury spur gear are looking pretty rough. This RC all-wheel drive version looks pretty good, and I think will be a lot tougher than the plastic stocker. And now we'll just get this motor installed. And there we go, that sounds a lot more serious. I have a lot of cars sitting around that need work. Let me know down in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing a video of me working on all of my cars, getting them fixed up, and then testing them out. If you're interested in seeing something like that, don't forget to get subscribed. The last thing I want to do is swap out these stock axle shafts. We broke one of these in the last video, and I don't want it to happen again. To take these old axle shafts off, you need to reach all the way down in here and take this screw out. Be careful because these screws are thread locked in, and if you strip it, you're going to be in trouble. And we're going to be replacing them with these Steelies from RC All-Wheel Drive. The original version of these did not have splines in them and they didn't fit very well. These are splined and they actually fit quite a bit better. I've got high hopes for these. Now we just get that set screw in there with some thread locker. There is a spot on these for a set screw, so make sure you're using that. And that actually feels really, really good. We'll just get the other side installed, and let's get all this put back together. Then I'm gonna go ahead and pop in a receiver, finish up this wiring. Let's see what this thing can really do. 3S power, let's see how she does. Definitely got more pep. Full throttle. Oh, she's quick, nice and stable too. Of course, stopping's always a problem with two-wheel drive. Let's get one more pass. All right, let's see how fast that was. 38 miles an hour. That's about 50% faster than it was before and plenty of speed for this truck. Let's see how she jumps. Okay guys, first of all, I want to say this thing is absolutely awesome. We have definitely created a monster Truggy here, and the low center of gravity makes this thing handle really, really well. Unfortunately, it's been raining basically non-stop where I live, and that means that everything is wet, and high power two-wheel drive in wet doesn't go well, as you saw. We were able to get some jumps on concrete. It jumped pretty darn well, though. It does like to nosedive like you'd expect a two-wheel drive vehicle to do, but overall it handled it really, really well. And this thing definitely feels different from any other vehicle I have. That being said, we did lose drive there at the end. Let's see what happened. I have my suspicions as to what the failure was, but let's make sure. All right, popping this cover off, and all we did was just move the motor down in that really hard landing. Unfortunately, this is probably gonna be a fairly common problem. This mount is plastic, and these screws just don't get a huge amount of purchase. Bigger washers might help. The stock system uses a little plate to keep things in line. Unfortunately, with aftermarket gears, those plates often won't work. Fortunately though, nothing actually broke. So what's the best way to put this low center of gravity Gorgon together? Well, if you have a Gorgon, the easiest thing to do is gonna be to wait until the chassis is available, and then just purchase the chassis and put it on there. You're definitely gonna have to figure out something for these rear screws on the front shock tower. What I did works pretty well, although you could probably get away without using the spacers. Just drill holes and put screws in. That'll help quite a bit. If you don't want to wait for this chassis, you've got some other options. You can buy a Gorgon and a Vorteks and just swap the parts over, or you can get a Vorteks, the Gorgon shock mounts, and then a Gorgon body kit, which includes basically everything else you need. All right, guys, I think this is an awesome upgrade. I'm really glad you joined me for it, and I'm really glad you'll join me in one of these videos.